Welcome back to Her Perspective. Today we have been discussing grieving. Maybe some of you there are thinking, maybe I'm not dealing with it as I should. We hope that you will learn what you need to get today. We took the question to the streets and we asked persons what was the hardest thing they had to adjust to after death. These are their reactions.
I was so sad when my grandfather did die.
Why?
Yeah. Because I loved him so much and he loved me, he cared about me.
And that hurt?
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
When my mother died, I was a come-of-age young man. So then I was responsible for myself. So I didn't have anything to adjust. When my father died, I have already married. So I didn't have anything to adjust.
It's important because if you have a family and you tell them go through all those phrases, it will be easier because you'll know what to expect in our elder age.
Well, it was the roughest time of my life and I never know me I really cope and come back to, but fate came along,
The thought of losing that person and knowing that you're gonna live and you're never gonna see that person again, it's hard to deal with. But in some cases, as time goes by, you learn to adjust yourself to it. But it's not easy.
Well, you have to wash for yourself, and you have to cook, and you have to clean, and you have to try be independent for yourself now, start work for yourself now and whatever, So that is the hardest thing since your mother passed away, You have to try cope with the other smaller one as brother and sister and try help them to go to school and, So, it's kind of hard when, parents drop out and,
My brother died brutally on the highway on December 23rd, 2011. Up to today, we have not heard anything, and it is still sad, and it's real hard to deal with.
Wow. Death is rough. Can be so rough on some of us. And we noted that there are different persons and different experiences that they had to deal with. And here we have, and Dr. Kelly, you actually dealt with a part of this journey, the journey of grieving. And this diagram shows that there are 3 significant points: loss, despair, and reinvestment. And we're going to ask you to quickly take us through this journey so we can better understand.
Okay, as was mentioned earlier, when you experience a loss, the immediate thing that happens thereafter is shock and denial. And then you move into what we call the emotional release. So the emotional release would be like, okay, why me? All kinds of things coming out. For some people, they use the Peter's language. But it is just something to get them to talk and to release that emotion. Then there is anxiety, because as we notice on the response of the public, there were some levels of anxiety. Who will take care of the children afterwards? Who will take care of me? And those kind of stuff. Then there's anger and guilt, depression and loneliness. And when they get to despair, that's where, as was mentioned earlier also, that's where you need the strongest support. Then there's a level of indifference and apathy and fatigue that happens, and so you're moving up again. There's intermittent interest, so some things that you were doing with the person who you have lost before, you had stopped doing it, but then at this time you start finding that you have a little interest in doing the things. Say, for example, you had been building a house together, and you just stopped, nothing is happening, and then this time you say, okay, well, I'm going to do some more, I'm putting up some more blocks and those things. Or if it were that you started something, a significant relationship or a task that you needed to complete, writing a book or going to a play, whatever it is, you start interested in that again. Re-entry's trouble is very significant because as you start moving on, and one of the things I like to use to explain this phase is that, say for example, the individual, you may lose a parent, and your parent, the one who's, well, obviously it has to be the one who is alive, decides to get married, then the child would start becoming resentful to that person. And so they may have started some relationship. It could not go anywhere. And maybe I'm telling you my story now, but the point is you get angry, and then after a while you realize, okay, but this person is alive, and they must move on. So you give permission than for this person to have a relationship and remarry. So the re-entry troubles could be troubles that come from outside that interferes with your own progress and moving on.
Well, pause there, Dr. Kelly. But persons might become vulnerable, especially persons who've lost a spouse, you know, by death, whatever means, however they lost the person. But how does, at what point, at what stage is it okay for that person to pick up the pieces and to say,
go into another relationship?
Yeah, I'm gonna move into another relationship?
All right, it's one of those questions again that you don't have a prescribed answer, because when you have lost someone and you're in the immediate moment of your grief, you should not make life-changing decisions. Don't write a will, don't change a will, don't enter into partnerships that can affect you later on, because your level of thinking and ability to process things may be compromised. And also in terms of relationship, it could be just that they're rebounding. Okay, I had this wonderful thing going on with this person and I just need somebody to fill the gap. When you enter in such relationships, what happens is that you start comparing, and you may also compromise some of your standards just because this individual may appear to have some of the qualities that your former spouse had. And so you have to be very careful. So when you are able to consciously make a decision and not having 10, 15, 20 questions to say, I wonder if, what if, you could use that as indicator to say, well, I am able to make an informed decisions that will not affect me later on. Okay, I hope that answers your question. So you have to be very careful of that.
But in light with that, Ruby, what was the hardest thing in this context? What was the hardest thing for you to adjust to?
To deal with the emptiness.
The emptiness.
For my mother, because she had a vision of the New Jerusalem, I went, every time I hear this song, Jerusalem, I enter into it.
Okay.
So I am reliving, it seemed, her dream, and hope that I will be ready to meet her when the life giver comes. So I'm living in hope.
All right, so Grace, you had mentioned loss and depression.
Depression and despair. It's very interesting that Ruby just mentioned this, because the next phase after the re-entry troubles is reminiscing and just engaging in memories of the person. And then you move into adjusting now. And this is where you're preparing for reinvestment and what we call a new normal. So for her, if we were to put that in context, when she's able to go to church and hear the song Jerusalem, that's the song, if
yes,
right?
Yes, brings back memories.
It's not just memory that it is bringing back, but she can sit, enjoy, and appreciate it for herself, because she has a hope to look forward to this, and it's not just because it is tied to her mother. That is a very significant element that will show that you have been able to grieve. And there are four goals of grief, which I think it's very important that I could close this with. Just
and we're going to do that. Thank you, Grace, for going through the stages of grieving. And when we come back, we're going to look at how we can help persons to deal with grieving. We'll be right back.